Have you ever been going through life and going to different appointments, going to hang out with friends, going to church, and you go through the motions and you put on a smiling face, but on the inside, you really don't feel as put together. Maybe you're not as happy as you want people to think that you are. And we try to put on a good face. We try to mask the hurt on the inside. But in reality, that's how we feel. We feel hurt. We feel disappointed with whatever's going on in our lives. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. We could be having a bad day, a bad week, or just a bad moment. But really, nobody else knows what you're going through. And it feels like people they wouldn't understand, or they'll be disappointed in you because of what you're dealing with. Maybe you have family members who don't really believe that depression or anxiety are real things, that real people go through. And so you worry about what they'd say if you told them that that's what you're dealing with. So you mask that, you try to hide it, and at the end of the day, you feel like you're the only one who understands what you're really going through. But I believe that today it's really important that you understand that there could be other people that are going through what you're going through. And so I want to help you answer the question, am I the only one struggling? I'm Josh Cave, and today I'm joined by my wife, Molly, as we discuss what it's like to feel like you're alone in the struggle. Let's dive in. Welcome to the AfterYouth Podcast, where we answer questions so that you can lose doubt and live confidently for God. We pray that this episode helps you in your Christian walk. If you enjoy our content, please support us by subscribing wherever you're listening or watching and give us a 5-star review. When you do that, you help people all over the world lose doubt and live with confidence. If you have a question you would like us to answer in one of our episodes, you can reach out on one of our social media platforms or email us at afteryouthpod@gmail.com. Let's jump into the episode. Molly, as we get started with this episode and kind of jumping into this, has there been a time in your life that you went through something that you felt like nobody else could truly understand what you were going through?
Yeah, I would say probably back, and I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but back when I was in high school, I had a wreck and I crushed my ankle and was on crutches for a while, had a few different surgeries. During that time, several people were checking in on me constantly throughout the years. How's your ankle doing? How are you doing? Because the doctor told me I wasn't going to be able to, walk, run, do a lot of those things. I mean, I could walk, but it was going to be very difficult for me, things like that. And I was very thankful for those people that were checking in on me. But I just, being, a teenager about to get into young adulthood, things like that, like, I didn't want to be known as the kid with the messed up ankle. I didn't, I was in a lot of pain all the time. I wanted to be able to do things that regular teenagers were doing at that time. I didn't have a car anymore. I wasn't really, for the most part, I was on crutches, so I wasn't really driving much anyways. And so I felt like, while everybody saw the surface me of limping or on crutches or, things like that, they didn't really understand that I was literally in my bed most days, every morning, crying, not wanting to get up, wishing that the Lord had just had them cut my foot off because I was hurting. But at that time, I was like, it could not be any worse than this and things like that. And I felt so alone because nobody else could truly understand the physical pain of it, but also the emotional aspect of not being able to live at that time what I thought was, live the life of a teenager.
And as you tell that, and obviously I knew this story, but I think as we begin talking about dealing with feeling alone and things like that, somebody could hear your story and be like, man, mine doesn't sound nearly as bad as what hers did, or maybe I have a story that's even worse. And we could easily get into kind of comparing. You had your issue with your ankle. Maybe somebody else is dealing with depression, and they sit here and hear your story, and they're like, "Well, mine's really not that bad." But I want to just clarify right up front that as we discuss this, we all have these serious issues in our lives. you had an issue with your ankle. Somebody else could have an issue with depression. Somebody else could have crippling anxiety. Somebody else could have another health issue. You know, they could have diabetes or something like that that really weighs them down. And so, no matter what your situation looks like, we all have our own crushed ankle, if you will. Um, but like you said too, there's so many different aspects of struggling with something like that. Where there's the physical, where you can't go do what other people are doing. There's the emotional, mental of worrying about what other people are thinking about you, worrying that people are making assumptions because you're limping and things like that. And so there's so many different layers to struggle. And then whenever you look around and feel like nobody else is dealing with that, nobody else has the same issue that I do, it can be incredibly isolating. So on top of the physical, the emotional and mental, you have this terrible aspect of loneliness and this feeling of isolation.
Well, yeah, and even going as far as the loneliness in my spiritual battle, like there were so many times that like I know God can heal me. I know that for a fact. Why hasn't he? Like why am I struggling with this? God, like why do I have to go through this? It was just hills and valleys that nobody really understood I was struggling with because on the outside I was all cheerful and stuff, but on the inside when I was worshiping the Lord, there were times I was like, God, I just don't know about this. Like I'm tired of standing here. This is hurting.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it wasn't an ankle issue, like all of us have had times in life where we were struggling with something and like God, this is real hard to worship you through whatever this is. I want to ask you, whenever you were going through this and trying to recover, trying to get past this issue, did you have a lot of people that you could talk to and share what you were going through?
So for me, like I wasn't really that person. I was the very much go with the flow kind of person. Don't complain. It's not that anybody drilled that into me. It's just I didn't want to be the problem.
Yeah.
And so my mom and my close family, they knew that I was not feeling well that day. They might have seen me crying or something like that, but nobody ever, whenever somebody was like, so how's it going? How's your ankle doing? Oh, it's great. Cause not only did I not want to be the problem kid, but also I didn't want to hurt the witness of the Lord to anybody that might question, well, why hasn't God, she's a good Christian girl. Why hasn't God saved her or, healed her yet? And so that may sound silly now, but at the time, like all of these things are rushing through my head. So it's like, oh, I'm doing fine. No problems here.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us get that way where we face something and we immediately we want to handle it ourselves. We kind of withdraw and we don't tell anybody about the really difficult feelings. We might say something with your ankle crush. You might tell somebody, "Yeah, I'm hurting a little bit," or whatever, but you're not. I I would bet that you never went into detail about, "This is how I feel mentally, emotionally. This is what I'm struggling with. I worried about what people think about me," because for one thing, you didn't wanna be a problem child, but at the same time, you didn't want anybody else to you don't wanna drag anybody else down with you.
Kind of like that joke where it's like somebody asks you how you're doing, you go into this big long thing. I don't know. I've heard a lot of people joke about, like they weren't really asking for that. That was just kind of like maybe like a Southern thing. How you doing?
Yeah, like an empty gesture, like, "How you doing?" "I'm good. How are you doing?" But I feel like through all of this, like, we're really bad about talking to people about our feelings and about our emotions, and honestly, we end up feeling incredibly isolated, uh, because of what we're struggling with, but also because we have trouble sharing it with people.
Yeah, and why do you think that is? Like, why do we find ourselves so isolated? And when we literally can find anybody around the corner on the phone, your neighbor next door, your family, why is it that we don't allow ourselves to open up to whoever is there for us?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is that we've gotten away from having mentors. And maybe I'm wrong, but we don't hear a lot anymore about having true mentors or being mentors to other people. Because with mentors, that's somebody that you spend a lot of time with. You tell them about your dreams, you tell them about your life, and they know you. They know you for who you truly are. Your struggles, your frustrations, your dreams, your good, your bad, everything about you. And I'm not saying that it's easy to find a mentor, but I feel like that dynamic, that having somebody outside of family, outside of just close relative or friendship that you can really be open and honest with, I feel like because that's gone away, we've lost that ability to truly connect with somebody in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, and talking about finding that person, that's actually something I've told some of the teens that we've worked with before. Like, find that person that you don't have to be polished and good with, always doing right. Find that person that, you can just text and say, "Man, this stinks." And they will text you back and say, "I know it. Like, this is a bad situation." Like, they will acknowledge that hurt with you.
But yeah, it's something that I've been thinking a lot about is trying to find somebody, even in my own life, that I can really be honest about what my future dreams are and struggling with all the different dynamics of your career path and being called to ministry and needing to make money and wanting a family and all these different things that you have to consider once you're an adult and out in the real world, because it's really hard to talk about that. Like, you can't really talk about all those aspects with just a work friend, and you can't talk about all those aspects with just a family member in a lot of cases, because a lot of those people have different biases, and everybody has a bias towards something. But whenever you have somebody that is kind of outside of those realms, a pastor, a good friend from church, or somebody like that, just somebody that's older, somebody with a little bit more life experience. Whenever you have those kind of people, they can listen and they can hear, and if they have a good relationship with you, they can tell you when you've messed up, and they can help you learn how to be better. But that's so that whenever you find yourself in these moments of struggle, in these moments where you feel alone in what you're going through, that you can talk to somebody who has probably been in a similar situation at some point in their life, whether it's in exactly the same situation or the same, like, mindset, the same emotional state.
Yeah. That's so great. We can find these mentors, find these people that can be crazy helpful in those moments. But what about in those times when, you're in that moment, you're in the struggle and you don't have time or there's nobody available to reach out to?
Yeah, and in those moments where something comes up and you just have to deal with it, you just have to grab it by the reins and try to deal with it. The first thing you have to do is you have to pray about it. And in some other episodes, I think talking about loneliness, I mentioned prayer like the third or fourth option. But whenever you're struggling with something and you're facing a challenge, and then you feel loneliness and you feel isolated through that, the only thing you can start with is prayer and then talking to God about it. And I actually had a similar feeling a couple weeks ago at church. I was going in and just kind of feeling a little bit down, like I wasn't anything bad, it wasn't anything terrible, just I was just feeling a little bit down, and I was kind of wrestling with this in my mind during worship, and I just kept trying to talk to God, like, just show me something. Just reveal yourself to me. Help me to feel the relief that only you can give. And as I was praying about it and thinking about it, one of the pastors went up to kind of do a transition in the service, and he was praying, and he stopped like mid sentence, but he began to talk about what God had put on his heart and these different things, and it really began to speak to me about that God loves you, God understands what you're going through, and in that moment where I was struggling and just having a difficult moment, those words like swept over me. But I believe that the reason that I could feel that relief, the reason that I could feel that peace as he spoke that, was because I began to put myself in the right mindset, in the right positioning to receive what God had to tell me, because we've all had times where we struggled and had a bad moment, and we crossed our arms and we sat there and we said, God, you're not going to touch me. I'm not going to take it today. And we went through a church service. We moved on to next week, and we got nothing from it because we refused to put ourselves in alignment with God in that moment.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to prove that he doesn't have my best interest at heart by not allowing it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And the second thing is to try opening yourself up to somebody else. Maybe you haven't had time to develop that mentorship relationship, and so that's okay. We're not all there. It takes time to develop that kind of relationship. So if you're struggling and feeling alone and feeling isolated, try opening up to somebody. I'm a guy's guy, and so I talk to people. It's usually over video games or something like that. Like I'm not gonna call up a buddy of mine and be like, "Hey, like, let me tell you about my day." That's just not my personality, and they'd be weirded out at the same time. But let's say I was struggling with something, I was having a hard time. I've got some guys that are good Christians that we play video games sometimes, and I might text them and say, "Hey, man, you want to play for a little bit?" And as we're hanging out, having a good time, I might open up and tell them, "Hey, I've had kind of a hard time, you know, with this going on," and just opening up and being honest with somebody can help give you some relief, give you some peace in that situation.
Yeah, and something about this finding that person. Like I said, I was never that person that wanted to be the problem. That somebody else, I'm blessed enough. Somebody else has got their own. They've got it worse off than I do, so I don't worry about me. But through other things, I discovered that hey, it would be helpful to speak up and open up to somebody. And I didn't know how to do that. Like Josh said, I didn't know how to find that person. And so it literally took me just praying to God, like, God, open my eyes to these people, bring these people to me. And slowly but surely, I was able to open up my eyes to like literally everybody around me in our young adult group that we had back in Alabama at that point. I was like, there are so many people here that I can trust, that I can lean on. They lean on me. I'm there for them. I know they'd be there for me. And I was able to open up to them, and I talked about a lot of stuff that I had never talked about before. And it was so just relieving in that moment. But like I said, like I had to pray that God would open my eyes up to these people, and I guess open my heart to these people too.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of leads into this last thing, talking about having to open yourself up, and it's really easy to be hard on yourself. It's really easy to beat yourself up over not wanting to talk to people, being insecure about what you're going through, or even the struggle itself. It's really easy to beat yourself up over all of those things. And that's what the enemy wants you to do. He wants you to feel bad for yourself and to sit there and be isolated and to get more and more depressed, more and more isolated because of beating yourself up. And so it's easier said than done, but don't do that. Don't allow yourself to succumb to those emotions of getting down on yourself, because we all struggle. We all face issues. We all have things that we go through. And remind yourself of the scripture that says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. And that's in Ecclesiastes 1:9. That means that everything that you're going through, somebody else at some point has gone through. And that should make you feel better, because that means that you are not alone. That means that there are people all over the world, people all throughout history that have struggled with things similar to what you are struggling with. And that doesn't make what you're going through irrelevant, because I know for me, like in my dramatic moments, that I would think, yeah, nobody else understands, and that makes my problem so big and so powerful. And that's why it's got me messed up, is because nobody has ever faced it like I have. Nobody else has ever had it as bad as I've got it in this moment.
That's what makes you unique. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
It's almost like a badge of honor. I'm going through this and nobody else can understand. Nobody else can possibly get it. But it's just simply not the case. And hopefully it doesn't burst your bubble, but that doesn't make what you're going through irrelevant. It means that you need people. You need God. You need people around you to go through what you're going through.
Right. It's not saying, hey, there's not pain in that situation because somebody else has already done it. It's saying that that other person experienced that pain just like you did. So, Josh, what would you say to this person that is listening right now that feels, isolated in the struggle, like nobody else can possibly understand what they're going through? What would you say to them right now?
What I would want to tell you is First of all, I've been there. I've been in those moments where you feel like nobody else gets it, and it's terrible. It's hard, it's challenging, and you don't know what to do next. So if you feel that way right now, I would tell you, please reach out to somebody. If you wanna share it with us, if you wanna talk with us, send us a message. I'll personally message you back, and we can talk about it. We can talk about what you're facing right now. I'll be happy to be there and to be praying for you. But whether it's us, whether it's a friend, whether it's a pastor, please reach out to somebody. Tell them what you're going through. Tell them what you're struggling with, because the last thing that you really want is to be alone facing this. We all need people. We all need people around us to help strengthen us, to help give us courage to stand up. And I hope you know that you're not alone. Throughout Scripture, we see that God is close to those that are hurting. And there are people around you who love you. There are family, friends, a church family that love you and want to be there for you, want to help you go through this. So, more than anything, I want you to know that you are not alone in what you're going through. Keep your head up, keep pushing through. God's going to take care of it. Just keep moving forward through it. But I want to thank you guys for listening to this episode. We'll see you next time.